Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir and today is another beautiful Wednesday. I hear in Vancouver it's already going to hit a 40 degrees centigrade. That's hot. But here in Toronto, it's pretty nice. It has been raining, so it's pretty nice and cool. But what is not cool is what's happening in the field of immigration. Backlogs are climbing the mountains of almost 2.7 million. We haven't heard about what's happening on postgraduate work permit extensions. The draws are scary as heck. And what I have to bring us some relief there and to get us some answers, some opinions, some perspective, a very good friend, Steven Meurrens, who is also a very well-renowned immigration lawyer, a partner with a firm in Vancouver. Welcome, Steven. How are you today?
Dude, that's a sick intro to the start of your video.
I'll try to do whatever I can to sort of keep it entertaining, right?
Yeah.
How's it going? I hear the weather's hot.
The weather is very hot. We're in the midst of a heat wave, and they say downtown is supposed to feel like 40 degrees today.
Okay, that's going to be hot. And you were camping, I hear, this weekend, right? So how was
Not
that?
camping. I went on a fishing retreat up to 100 Mile House, which is about 6 hours north of Vancouver.
Okay, and did you manage to sort of hook any big ones there?
We got nothing too big. We got about 3 or 4 just 5-pound, 3 to 5-pound trout.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I was hoping if you got any big fish over there, probably.
No, maybe that's more ocean fishing.
I don't know. I was wondering if any of the IRCC blokes were also swimming in there, and you managed to hook any one of those on.
To hook a good CEC draw. I feel
Okay.
like, you said that I might be able to provide good news. I feel like last time I was Mr. Negativity.
Yes, I mean, imagine what happened last time. But you were spot on, right? When we spoke,
Yeah.
I think it was month of January. You said, yeah, that was January. I think 17th
Yeah.
or 18th or 17th of January. And you were absolutely spot on when you said you're not expecting any express entry draws anytime soon. People were very upset, but
Yeah.
it was quite true.
I was right about that. I was wrong in that I think I said, you can never be wrong if you don't remember exactly what you said. But I feel like I said that I didn't think there would be skilled worker draws this year, which
Yeah.
I was wrong about. Yeah.
But you said there won't be any express entry draws for some time. Well, that worked
Yeah.
very well. And the way things are going right now, even if you said there will be no skilled worker draws versus what's happening right now, that's not
It's very close. And I feel really like I'm very surprised that they did a general draw to bring it back instead of a CEC draw. That was what my big thing was in January, was that I thought it would only be CEC draws when they resumed.
So what do you think now? Will they go back to doing any CEC draws now with the way things are?
Well, I think, in express entry, when it started, there were, everybody talks about CEC and the federal skilled worker class. There's also the federal skilled trades class,
Trades,
right?
yes.
Which is cooks, some other trades, lower language requirement. They traditionally got 1 to 2 draws per year that were just targeted to the federal skilled trades class, and otherwise were basically left out, unless they had a provincial nomination certificate. So, I could see there being limited CEC draws. I think, and you've talked about it, the big change is going to be the occupation-specific draws.
Yeah.
Or the groupings. We assume they're occupation-based, but the general grouping draws. But I think, people who are waiting in the pool now, who may not have been around before express entry, might not appreciate how limited it was before. And I pulled up in preparation for this chat. I mean, you were practicing before 2015. You remember, right? The 29 knocks that federal skilled worker applicants could qualify for. It was limited to 29 job or occupations. And then the big one that I think, for me anyways, was the biggest realization of how abrupt and unpredictable things could be, was in November, and I'm just pulling up the CIC website, the archived Operational Bulletin 554 for the ministerial instructions that capped the Canadian experience class and also had occupation-specific classes. So there was a 12,000 application cap in the Canadian experience class with a maximum of 200 complete applications for each occupation. And without any warning, they announced that effective immediately back then, the following occupations just wouldn't qualify for the CEC: administrative officers, administrative assistants, accounting technicians and bookkeepers, retail sales supervisors, food service supervisors, and cooks. So I remember back then I had clients who were at 11 months experience of being a cook, and all of a sudden the government announced no more cooks.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was it. It was very hard for people. And that was in place basically until Express Entry launched. And I
But
feel
won't you
like,
agree things were also different then in terms of the government was different, the way things were being panned out were different, the way the immigration systems were different, and the whole outlook towards how immigration is contributing to the economy and how the negative growth is basically factored in. All those things were equally different. I mean, what that was like almost 9 years back.
it was 9 years back. It was done to bring in, because they didn't have the ability to restrict intake like they do with Express Entry. But I remember at the time when Express Entry was introduced, the big hype was there'll be no occupation limit. It'll essentially be based on a human capital ranking. And now what do we see in 2022? Them bringing in the legislation to do these groupings-based specific draws. So, we could be going back to a system where, kind of like in the OIMP human capital stream,
Yeah,
only
yeah,
certain occupations get drawn and everyone else gets left out. That
yeah.
seems to be where I mean, I don't see why else they would bring in these grouping based draws. I thought they might do a Ukraine specific draw at some point, because I don't think the groupings are based just on occupation. It really can be any category. But I
True.
think the future is going to be very unpredictable for people. Um, and there'll be it's just going to be the potential for very unpredictable draws every 2 weeks. This one could be a CEC draw only for tech. The next draw could be skilled workers in certain occupations. I assume there'll be a federal skilled trades class draw. Again, that category seemed to also be just, always gets the short end of the stick.
They do,
But like,
but they only have a quota of about 1,000 people per year. So, with that in perspective, I can understand why they would be limiting those draws as well.
yeah, I mean, it's still a category, right? Like it
Yes, of
still
course.
is, it still is a specific program in the regulations that uh, just seems to get left out,
Okay,
except for
I'm
those
not
two
sure
specific
how.
draws per year.
Yeah, I'm not sure how closely you were following Bill C19 during its implementation, as in when it was being heard in the Parliament, as well as finally when it has been approved. Uh, CIC News came back and said that they have a spokesperson from CIC who confirmed, or rather, who mentioned, confirmed is not the word, who mentioned that it would be implemented from early next year.
Yeah.
So at least for this year, we can expect the draws to continue the way that would be because Sean Fraser said so.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I would think like they would need, the new knocks are coming out
yeah,
supposedly coming out in November.
November. Yeah,
And it seems like it would be a lot of tech updates needed to go into doing occupation specific draws to then just have to completely possibly redo the tech again for the new knocks.
yeah.
And as we've seen, like tech updates are slow.
But isn't this surprising that they are facing so many issues with the tech? Why can't they just get some tech people on board and get this sorted out? Or is it because they have outsourced so many of these projects to different companies and they just can't
Yeah,
get a handle on
I
them?
think it's because they outsourced at such a speed that that they didn't do full on checks probably the way that they should have, and systems aren't integrating the way they should. I don't know if you saw there was an immigration consultant who tweeted that, a lot of the source code on new applications is visible
Yes,
beyond what
yes,
IRCC might want. Like, it
Yeah.
just seems like it was a bit rushed. And I mean, we were talking before the show started today that they're at a conference. IRCC said the postgraduate work permit extensions have been delayed because of tech issues, the new program for that, which is weird because they've had similar programs before. So I don't know
Yeah.
why there would be a tech issue this time.
Yeah, so this was the tweet from Will,
Yeah.
who's also an immigration lawyer, and he said, confirmed by IRCC in a panel, postgraduate work permit extensions are still being fine-tuned. There will be instructions online shortly. This word shortly and this word soon and this word upcoming is now very, very scary. And they're saying that it seems like a lot of back-end tech work likely. They'll need to build automations to deal with the volume of likely applicants. I mean, did they not already know what would be the volume of applicants? I mean,
So
they are
I
the
think a
only
lot
people
of
who have
like,
data.
I mean, I'm not sure what Will means in his tweet. Like, this seems like, I think might be Will pontificating, because they already did a post-grad work permit extension at the height
Last
of
year, yeah.
COVID. So I don't know why there would be a different tech component this time. It could just be that they're fine tuning. I don't know what, I mean, I didn't attend the panel. I think Tamara also, who's another immigration lawyer,
Yeah.
tweeted something similar about about the current, what's going on at this panel. And if I check out, I'd have to check out Tamara's tweet, but I think she's more just saying, no, I mean, Tamara also says that they're having a hard time putting the tech in place for this program. If you don't follow Tamara, I'm pretty
I
sure that
do.
she
No, no,
seems
I
to have
do.
decided that she's going to tweet every single possible thing related to immigration and retweet every other lawyer. So if you and consultant. So if you only want to, it's if you want to never miss a single update
Yeah.
related to every one of my tweets gets retweeted, and it's quite something. Like, it's good. It's a centralized account to follow.
True, true. Okay, let's come back to Bill C19. Now, you've read about it, you've heard about it. I'm sure you've followed to an extent as well. Uh, one of the one of the amendments mentioned that the minister should announce to the parliament the categories that they would be, using for the particular year at the start of the calendar year. You think that would help people at least plan what's going to happen, or that is a good one and that would actually happen the way they are saying that it should happen?
I think it's going to be done so broadly to be meaningless in terms of what categories. Like, I feel like they're just going to say, oh, it will be occupation, or it will be, I think it'll be so broad. Well, and why would they want to restrict their ability to, to do a specific draw?
Yeah, why be
I don't have
transparent?
like, and then there could be a change. Like, yeah, I don't have a lot of faith that there'll be any predictability in it.
Because, I mean, if they do not announce certain occupations, I mean, already people are feeling high and dry. They're feeling cheated in the sense like they've been asked to wait, in the sense like Sean Fraser was saying, okay, we are going to be conducting express entry draws soon. So people are waiting in anticipation. As of today, even scores of 500, those people are anxious, those people are stressed. They do not know if they're going to get called or not, because Sean Fraser tweeted that they will be conducting draws gradually. Now, gradually, shortly, upcoming, soon, these are the words. I never thought I would have to look
There's
up
a
the
lot that
dictionary.
goes into the word gradually.
Yeah, exactly. So, and in the last two draws, they did actually prove what they were trying to
Yeah.
mean by the word gradually.
Well, that memo, I can't remember which memo I tweeted, either the January one or the March one, said that, it would likely be above 500 for the rest of the year, unless they expand what they're willing to have in the backlog, which I don't know if they're, so keen on doing. I don't know. I call me biased towards CEC. I still feel like there'll have to be a draw towards CEC just to avoid a lot of negative stories about foreign workers losing status and having to go home. But it's been
Yeah,
a year and there have been those stories. So
yeah.
maybe
But
I'm wrong. Maybe, like, I mean, the one sense from the backlogs and just people's comments has been that people did not like that those big draws led to big backlogs.
yes,
And the stories now are a lot more about, 2.2 million applications in the queue seems to be generating more media interest than this foreign worker can't get an invitation to apply for permanent residence. So, I mean, I think CEC, people waiting in the CEC pool, foreign workers who've worked here a year deserve to get that invitation. I'm just not sure it'll happen, at least this year. And then next year, it might only happen for certain occupations. And the thing that's weird about it all, and we talked about this a little bit in January, how it really is all just based on levels, right? Like,
Yeah.
everything starts with what is the overall levels number. And I remember, I think you were disappointed when you saw that they weren't going to increase it. And if they don't increase it, they have to restrict intake somehow. So, I think it's going to be, and the other thing that's odd about it is you have every election, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Liberals, I don't really follow what the bloc says, but the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Liberals all say that they want to introduce programs for low-skilled workers. Like, there seems to be this consensus that we should be able to transition people from temporary worker to permanent resident. Yet the irony is that during this all-party consensus, the programs to transition high-skilled workers to permanent residents are even starting to fade. So it's the political rhetoric and just these caps, the targets, the quotas on how many people can become permanent residents each year are leading to just this very restrictive immigration programs.
Okay. But I mean, okay, going back to what you were talking about, the memo which said the scores might be at 500 plus. I remember that memo very well. I mean, I wish I would have pulled it up earlier, but it'll take me some time to bring it up. Anyways, what it did not say that the scores will remain at 500 throughout the year. What it mentioned was that even if they are to conduct the draws now, the possibility of scores will remaining over 500 is quite high. Not throughout the year, but
not throughout the year, just to meet their targets for this year.
Yes. And it also mentioned that the pool, or rather the number of people in the pool above this high score of 500 tends to be homogeneous. Okay. So they're basically a similar kind of profiles, people with very high qualifications, educational qualification, high language skills, work experience in Canada, etc. They all tend to be same. And therefore, I guess the bill C19 becomes crucial so that they can pick and choose specific occupation. But the point I'm trying to make here is, who are these people who go out and get the score of 550 pluses as the scores now? Because it's not all the CECs. So when you said you're biased towards CEC, which is fair, because these people in a lot of way have contributed. People tend to say taxes. I don't agree with the taxes part, but in other manners as such. So their contributions is acknowledged by the fact that they automatically do get additional work experience points. If you have studied in Canada, you do get the advantage of the points there. So you already have an advantage by the sheer fact that you are in Canada, whether you're studying or you're working. So that advantage is already there. Express Entry allows for that. The fact that they do CEC draws, or they conducted CEC draws, which was last couple of years, was primarily due to COVID, because it was easier for them to transition these people from being temporary to permanent. The point I'm trying to make here is that even if they do want to conduct CEC specific draws, the scores are not going to come down pretty quick unless they do big draws. The reason for that is majority of the people, even with the scores of 500 plus, are not necessarily CEC, or not necessarily the big group of people that they would want to give that advantage to. Because for a Canadian experience class, even with the score of 500 plus, you are basically either you're bilingual, so you have English and French, you probably have a master's, you're still a younger bloke, and you may have a job offer. If not, you probably have a sibling in Canada, or these are the advantages points that gets you above 500. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah. Or you have a senior like 00 knock.
Yes, of course. Or the job offers with LMIAs with 50 or 200. Yes.
I mean, in theory, it should all, if they go back to general draws by 2020, I mean, that's the thing, by 2024, 2023, it should come back to what it was pre-COVID, as they push out as they finalize all of the applications from the 75-point draw, the TEER PR pathway, they're still processing. So once that's all, pushed through the system, points should come back down to 470 or whatever they were before COVID, which even there is still, in my opinion, too high for CEC people especially. But that when the TRPR was launched, they initially said everyone would be processed. Or I think now that I go back and reread, like you said, you have to focus on every word in their press release gradually, shortly. So they said everyone who applies to the TRPR on the day that it launches will be will get their application processed by the end of the year. Now I think they're talking end of 2023 for the whole category. So once they push out all of those people, the points should come back down. But by the time they come back down, we're into the world of occupation specific draws. And I think it will be very interesting to see whether these draws are going to be inclusionary, meaning there's maybe a narrow list of 29 occupations like there were back in the skilled worker days, or exclusionary, meaning that there's certain knocks that they just don't want to draw. Like when they said that cooks and administrative assistants no longer qualify for the CEC. That to me is something I'll for sure. I don't know which way it will go, and I'm curious to watch. Especially like so the other thing that in one of the memos it talked about when the new knocks come out, they're adding new occupations. So the pool will be bigger there. The heavy equipment operators, in theory, there should be a lot of people who qualify for that. And that's going to now be skilled. Long haul truck drivers, and I think all truck drivers are going into the skilled category. So it'll also grow the amount of people eligible for the pool there. And then we'll just see how what they decide to do with this whole groupings thing. Will there be a Ukraine specific draw? That's the other thing that's mentioned in all the these memos that I've tweeted, which is that the ability to resume normal draws and what the CRS scores will depend on what program they introduce for Ukraine. I don't think they've introduced the Ukrainian permanent residence program yet. And the points are already above 550 before any possible Ukraine specific programs introduced. So it's very unpredictable. I do think, it's always interesting, like the memos to the ministers that I and other people tweet, it's always 2 to 3 months late. So you see the positive spin, the positive press releases, and then you get the memo to the minister, which says, okay, here's some actual concerns and things that, the department's watching. So I don't know which way it'll go.
But there was another, I wouldn't say it was a tweet, but I think Sean Fraser came out and said that they are not looking to entirely replace the current express entry draws with the new category specific. What are you anticipating? Would you think that they would have a complementing draw along with the express entry regular draws the way they are holding them now?
No, I think there'll be still one. I think it's, do they fully know yet how it will all work? I'm not sure. The other thing to note that we haven't talked about is Katrina Tapley, the deputy minister, is retired, and there's a new deputy minister at IRCC.
Yeah.
And the number 2, I can't remember who the ADM was, has also left. So there's new head people at the bureaucracy who may have their own vision of how they want to implement things. What I think we'll see are just a mix of occupation-specific draws as well as higher draws. I don't think it'll be complementary because otherwise they would just invite too many people, right? Like that's, and again, this all takes place in the context of we don't know what new programs may be coming. The only one that they've hinted at is this Ukrainian permanent residence program, which, depending on how they do, and there'll be, possible big political pressure, the number of Ukrainian individuals who are going to be coming here on open work permits is huge, with the potential to completely displace other programs. And that's still a mystery that I'm not even sure the department is fully sussed out how they will, what they will do with it. And again, all of the, this is what we talked about also in January, all of these limitations are just based on there being this cap and these targets on how many permanent residents they want to have each year. And there's no cap on the number of temporary residents. And really, like, temporary residents are here, especially workers. They're here, they're paying taxes, they're working. But for some reason, there's this cap on how many can become permanent residents. And that's what the whole, foreign worker, that's what the media focuses on. That's what, the report to Parliament has to talk about. It killed me when this year that it's, oh, there's a record 405,000 immigrants this year. Housing's going to be blown out. The government has lost control of immigration. And it's like, no, that has it's the people are already here working. The overwhelming majority of them are here working. And the question shouldn't be, why are there so many permanent residents coming? Who's going to build houses for them? They're already here. They're foreign workers, and there's this arbitrary cap that's just politics and optics based. And if they would just find a way some party to get the political will to say, you know what, that's not going to be our main measuring stick now. We're going to measure it as foreign workers, or we're just going to measure it as total number of people coming who aren't visitors or something like that. A lot of the pressures on the number of temporary foreign workers who can stay as permanent residents will just be gone. But until there's a party that's willing to move beyond needing a target of how many permanent residents there are per year, there'll always be these issues.
All right, let me take you a bit away from what the future hold, and let me take you to the what's happened in the past. Talk to me about the backlogs. 2.7 million is that number. There, so many people are worried. So many people are losing sleep over it. They don't seem to stop the intake of temporary residents. I mean, what you have on the screen is the immigration inventory as per the July 17th.
Yeah, and this is just permanent residents. This
is just permanent residents, obviously. So if I take you to the where do I have that? Yes, this is the temporary residence inventory. Okay, that's at 1.7 million. What's going on there? I mean, do you have any insight, or have you been sort of hearing anything from anybody there?
I mean, like, it's, when you look at especially when you look at the extensions, why they don't just automatically extend people's permits during a period where they clearly are on limited resources is beyond me. But it's the same, right? There's no cap on the number of temporary residence applications. There right now is no way to restrict it. So applications are piling up. And, it's something like they're working out the fine details of the postgraduate work permit extension. And it's like, why don't you just extend them all? Like, I don't understand. Like, why do people have to apply to this? Why don't you just, maybe people can, I mean, I don't even know why we need physical permits to begin with. Like, this was something that I tweeted a couple days ago, is like, electronic travel authorization holders, and there isn't really a backlog there, it seems. They don't appear anyways. They take a few minutes. And then to board a plane, you need just an electronic travel authorization, like a number that you have to give the airlines. It works well. Why is it that can be electronic? Temporary resident visas, that's 903,971 times that someone has to glue a visa to a passport. Like, what a waste of, like, 180,000. And PR cards, a physical card. There's just so many ways that I'm surprised they aren't just reducing the amount of interactions people have to have with the system. They did increase the LMIA-based work permits from 2 years to 3 years. But again, in times like this, when there's such a big backlog, I'm surprised they don't just stretch it, like a work permit extension. I don't know why they don't just send an email to everyone through my CIC to say, hey, we're automatically extending your work permit until X date, December 31, 2024, until we think the backlogs will be taken care of, and then reallocate these resources elsewhere.
Have you considered running for the office, Steven?
No, No, I haven't.
You should, because all your ideas are so good in sense of making this so easy. Sometimes you wonder why isn't IRCC considering? I mean, this makes so much sense. It saves them money, it saves them resources, but for some reason. But then I have another question. The fact is, and it's a fact, that these numbers are just rising by every single day. Every month, this number goes up by a few 100,000. There is no way they can get a handle on this. Sean Fraser
No.
last year said that they've hired 500 people. They're bringing this technology, etc. I do not know what that means anymore, but they're not getting any handle on this number. Do you think they will cancel these applications or a part of these temporary residents? Let me again repeat for the viewers who are listening. I'm talking about temporary residence applications only. I'm only asking about cancellation of temporary residence applications. Stephen, do you think that's a possibility? Because that's the only way they can. Either they have to do that or they have to sort of stop the intake. Either of these two.
Yeah. Or they just come out with something like, so the temporary resident visa, I don't know how many of those are pre-September, although
7.
presumably by this point, because so in September 2021, the applications that were filed after September 2021 are getting
Yeah.
priority over those filed before. And I know, a few people who they're still waiting on their pre-September 2021 TRV, but their post has been approved. So the application no longer really matters to them.
Yeah.
I mean, the third way, there are two other ways. So they can either, in order to get a hold of this, terminate existing applications, which I don't think they will do. Restrict intake, which I also don't know how they'll do, right? Like the schools aren't going to put up with the
Of course
loss
not.
of revenue. Work, a lot of the worker-based programs are based on short-term needs, although work permits, from like India take almost a year, it seems.
Yeah.
What I do wonder is, I don't know what they'll do. I could see for extensions, like I don't. I mean, there must be there's got to be some tech reason or something why the extensions aren't just all being automatically extended. Um, I I don't know what it is. It seems like obvious to me that, what's the worst that'll happen? Some guy who doesn't maybe, I don't even know what the word, like some guy who may not meet the requirements because they're not sure if that person still has truly temporary intent will get a visa, will get to work a little bit longer. Like the downside seems almost minuscule compared
Yeah.
to any upside of processing the application. I think the bigger
Sure.
one is going to be just all these work permits that are for job offers that are like a year old. Um, Temporary resident visas submitted for, to attend someone's funeral and they died 10 months ago and the visa is still being processed.
Yeah.
Caregiver applications, I mean, the stream that I really wonder about, and it's a quasi permanent resident / temporary resident stream.
Yeah.
You have caregiver applications filed in 2019, 2020 for, looking after someone, a kid who may be 4. By this point, the need for the caregiver may not be obvious. But I don't know, if
Yeah.
they did just cancel every application in the temporary resident stream without the ability to restrict intake, you'll be almost, right back to where you were, right? Like people just reapply,
Yeah.
because those needs aren't fading.
Because a
So
lot of those applications in the work permit category are spouse open work permits. So C41s and C42s, plenty of them there. And what's happening is that since they're taking almost a year, more than a year to process them, sometimes people lose their eligibility for those work permits, and the
yeah,
entire the entire purpose for making an app submission is completely lost.
yeah.
Family
Um,
reunification or not.
And this will go either one of two ways. Like either they'll be under pressure, so maybe they'll just start approving applications, or they'll go the other way and they'll just start refusing. And then we haven't really talked about yet. Like eventually, artificial intelligence should lead. This is where I get a little bit pessimistic, is I think, right now the artificial intelligence is producing reasons that aren't great. It's speeding up applications. The data on that is clear, but it's leading to bulk refusals where the reasons aren't great, and so they're easy to challenge in judicial reviews. Eventually, I feel like the AI will allow for bulk processing of applications, and it will be sophisticated enough that the decisions will be harder to challenge through the use of detailed boilerplate language. And that may be another way that they are able to quickly process applications with very little oversight. Now, the counter argument that was made to me, which does sound believable, is that may be the case for a few months, and then they won't properly fund the AI, and then it'll go clunky, and then we'll be right back to where we were. So, like, who knows? But yeah, I don't know what they'll do with the. Yeah, there just needs to. This can all be solved through like political will and getting creative, and deciding, like what's the worst that'll happen. C42. There's this big push on genuineness with open spousal work permits, particularly out of India. So what's the worst that happens if like, they just drop their scrutiny of that until they get these backlogs under control? Okay, maybe a couple people who got married for questionable purposes, primarily immigration purposes, maybe a handful. I don't know how wide scale that issue actually is. I feel like it probably bigger, like less of an issue than some people make it out to be.
Yeah.
But okay, but then they get their processing under control. And if there's a couple people who are in marriages that, may have had an immigration component, yeah, that's no good. That sucks for the system. But it seems a lot better than these huge backlogs. Whereas you said people completely miss the opportunity to be reunited with their spouse. Yeah, I'd say that for every one fake marriage that they may be one fake marriage and one fake marriage taking advantage of immigration legislation that they spot through their increased scrutiny of these applications, there's, as you mentioned, probably 99 people who don't get to reunify with their spouse, where family reunification is delayed because of this enhanced scrutiny that's just leading to massive backlogs.
Yeah.
The other one that's like, and it's specific to India also, it seems, is, the incredible focus on whether, determining whether someone has the language requirements to do a job in Canada, and the work permit, like with these backlogs, the approval rates for a lot of countries are going down due to increased scrutiny. And I'm also not sure what, the benefit of it is. Like, I have yet to, I don't know. I just like, it seems like there's just a lot of like, in my opinion, obviously the department feels different, but a lot of unnecessary scrutiny that in ideal times may be necessary, but given the current state of the backlogs, is just compounding problems.
Well, the backlogs, at least for the express entry for a change, are looking slightly better than the numbers
Yep.
that we have been seeing earlier. So about 5,000 some for Canadian experience, about 18,000 some for federal skilled workers, and obviously PNPs, because those have been continuing throughout the last 2 years. So therefore, I wouldn't say this is unreasonable. This is quite a reasonable number at this point of time. And would this be the reason why they have started with the express entry draws in a gradual manner?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I guess we'll learn later if this comment of mine is going to be wrong, but I feel like they've largely cleared out the skilled worker backlog.
Yeah.
Like the, files, the last people who got invites in December 2020, their applications, and I know there's probably exceptions to this, but they seem to have been processed. And it was very restrictive for a year. Very restrictive for the CEC people, especially since September, but they seem to be driving it down. The TRPR will hopefully soon be processed as well. and express entry should get back to normal, which is already restrictive. And the thing that, I mean, we talked about this also in January, like there was this tension that was building where, remember when like in 2015 or 16, the points were around 415, right? Like to get an invitation to apply.
2017, 31st of May
2017.
2017,
Oh, you remember the
413.
date? Yeah. So it was
I know it.
450,
413 was the lowest draw ever.
413. And then it crept up to 478.
Yes.
And there, you know, in theory, it just could have kept creeping up as the number of temporary residents continue to increase in Canada. That and then, you know, people were commenting like there's this mismatch between the number of people arriving as foreign workers, especially, or students transitioning to foreign workers, and the amount of permanent residents that they could take each year. What would happen to lower the points? That was COVID. And now they may be able to reset in an era, though, of occupation-specific draws, but also in this era of huge backlogs on the temporary side that have to be addressed.
Okay.
I find that actually as problematic, right? Like the express entry backlogs are very problematic. The delays in getting to Canada and the differences at visa posts are crazy. I don't know if you saw that mandamus judicial review. I can't remember the name of the case, but where a judge specifically commented that, I think it was Justice Mosley, specifically commented that it's not permissible that applications from Western Europe or the West are just flying through the system.
True.
And applications in that case from Ghana just seem to be permanently paused.
Yeah.
And you can replace Ghana with a lot of other countries.
Okay. So before I close this chapter for express entry draws, because I know we've been going on with that, one last thought. Do you think the scores will go below 500 this year or not? And don't worry, I'm going to hold you onto this one. We will talk again in a few months, and we'll sort of put you on the spot then. But what do you think?
For a general draw or for a CEC specific draw?
I'm saying express entry draw. So if it is CEC specific draw, even I'm sure the scores will definitely drop below 500. But I personally do not anticipate a CEC draw this year.
I think there'll be a CEC draw.
Okay.
But I think federal skilled worker draws will remain above. I think federal skilled worker draws will remain above 500 for the year.
Okay.
And that there will be and that the reason for that will be a CEC draw where they'll tolerate some sort of a small backlog. Yeah. Especially if in November they successfully get the new NOx in, and there's a category of like, you know, the long haul truck drivers, the heavy equipment operators. I did a tweet. There's like 16 NOx. Those are the big two. And estheticians, like if they're all able to enter the pool, that should, you know, result in points going up as the year.
All those people, again, I'm assuming with most of those, the education is not going to be Masters Plus, because that's one of the areas where
it might not be, but there'll be some who just the size of the pool will grow. And as foreign workers come back, as students graduate, you know, there should be, especially if the provinces get bigger quotas. I think there will be, I think skilled worker above 500 for the year. CEC, there'll be a draw or two that will dip it below. Okay. That's my CEC bias.
All right. So that's Steven's call for the year in terms of express entry, 500 plus for all program or FSW, and it will drop below 500 if there are CEC specific draws. I maintain my, I think it might actually drop, because if they're going to go gradually with these numbers, I think it should drop below 500 within the next 3 months. Because at the end of the day, if I just pull up this page, and let me just bring this here, the number of people in the pool above 500 is about 9,000 people. So even if they are to conduct, say, between 2,000 to 2,500, even if they increase that gradually and they do that bi-weekly, that number, And the reason why I'm saying that number will get cleared out within the next 3 months is because the number of people who get added to the pool with scores above 500 are not too many. They can't be too many because that profile needs certain factor points, which is not that easy to find or to get. Therefore, I maintain that within the next 3 months, you should see the scores dropping below 500, even if they go with the gradual draw sizes as they happen. But fingers crossed, I
Yeah.
actually hope that they do go below 500.
No, I hope. I'm trying to think now. Do I hope for that, or would I rather see CEC go lower? Honestly, I'd rather see CEC go lower.
CEC draw.
That's my bias towards CEC.
Yeah,
I'd
fair
rather
enough.
see CEC go a lot lower and federal skilled worker. There's an argument, like I've heard some people argue that, and might not be popular amongst certain people, but I've heard arguments that CEC should be, the points for CEC should be 0 before there is a skilled worker draw, with the exception of people who are already in Canada. Because obviously the CEC doesn't capture entrepreneurs who are here,
Yeah.
because self-employed work doesn't count.
Yeah.
And I've also heard rumors that that might also be part of the groupings that they may
Yes.
do, is to try to
Category based.
target
Yes.
self-employed skilled workers who are in Canada. The other optimist note that I will have is, we talked earlier about Will and Tamara's tweets that IRCC is saying there's some tech that they're working on before the post-grad work permit extensions are possible. I have some optimism that that is a sign that the program won't function the way it traditionally has, where people have to apply, and they may be working on something that automatically starts doing these extensions. Just because I don't understand why there would be a tech issue. Like they've done literally last year or 2021 or sometime in 2021, they had a post-grad work permit extension. So we know the tech's there. And I'm optimistic, likely to be proven wrong, but optimistic that the reason there's a tech issue is because they're testing something that will either make this broader than we think or make it automatic. That's my, very optimist position, and I'm fully expecting to be proven wrong. I just don't know why else there would be a tech issue. Like they've already done it. It's a year old.
Because for whatever reason, we still get the system glitches every single day. The web forms don't get delivered. You can never log in every single time in a smooth manner. Yes, so all those continue. I want to pick your brain on another question. The mandate letter. We know most of the immigration programs or policy changes stem out of the mandate letter that is issued to the immigration minister at the beginning of the year. This year, the mandate letter mentioned, or rather asked the minister to introduce new pathways for international students and foreign workers in the express entry. Anything on that? Because I know Sean Fraser has then come out and in a couple of press conferences mentioned that he is considering the motion M44. I'm not sure if you heard about that one, Randeep Sarai. And in conjunction with that, within the 4 months from the date M44 was implemented or passed, he is going to work on a framework to come up with a new permanent pathway for international students and foreign workers. And in my opinion, that is one of the reasons why I'm thinking CEC draws specifically may not happen, because they have a more permanent program in the works there. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, that pathway would just be lowering the CEC draw, but like that would be a way of doing a pathway. I don't think they're, I don't know, like they, like that 75-point draw seems to have really threw off express entry for quite a period that I'm not sure. And the TRPR had that category where it was part of, in my opinion, the shame of the TRPR category was like some occupations filled, like the occupation-based program filled quick, and the program where people, as soon as they graduated, I think that there were people maybe who've worked here for a year, they could have had a higher cap for that rather than just automatic PR for the lucky few who got into that program. Look, if they're going to do it, they'll just have to increase overall numbers. And I just haven't seen, they do, they just released their 3-year plan, and it wasn't any different. The plan in 2022 didn't change from their 3-year plan, 2021 to 2024. So I just don't see a broad program for international students to transition to permanent residency. The mantra that they already have is that there is a way to transition. You get your postgraduate work permit, you get a year of Canadian experience, and then you can apply for permanent residence. They already like kind of present that as the pathway for students. And the way to achieve that would just be lower CEC draws for, you know, the group, lower CEC draws for a grouping. Like if you graduated, or just a lot more points if you graduated from a Canadian post-secondary institution. They can do that within express entry. Just
Yeah.
make that like 100 points. And then, you know, it'll be like inflation in the country as a whole. You know, points for specific categories will go up, and then just, you know,
Yeah,
the
why
points
not?
don't matter. Like it's
Of
just
course. Of course. So, in your opinion, another TR to PR coming this year?
no,
No, right? I mean,
no.
I thought so as
I
well, but
think
there are
they
some people who.
no.
Okay. All right. So
Not saying
that's
I don't think there should be. I think there should be a pathway. I mean, I've like said before, I think that if you work here as a foreign worker for say 2 years or 3 years, you should just automatically become a permanent resident. So what I'm saying when I say no, it's not that I don't want there to be one. I just think everyone should. I don't understand. Like, I mean, I'd love to move beyond these quotas and these caps on permanent residents. I just don't think they'll do one. Reading the tones of the memo to the minister, they'd almost make it sound like, well, because we did this big program, now there's delays. Like, you know, you almost hear it like there's a hint of regret when you read
Yeah.
the memos to the minister.
Okay. All right. Then, food for thought. There are potentially more than 600,000 international students in Canada. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the numbers. Probably more. I'm just sort of taking a number of 2019 data list that I have. So if there are 600,000 international students in Canada, I'm assuming at least 50% of them would want to immigrate. It has to be more, but I'm assuming,
Yeah.
just for a very, very weak conservative number there, that at least 50% of them would want to transition themselves as permanent residents. Where is the allowance for that kind of a number? Because year on year, they keep adding more international students.
Yeah. There's not like, well, so the first way that they limit it is by limiting which schools get postgraduate work permits. So that's the first way that they really limit which students can stay. There's also been a bit of a crackdown on which students are actively working towards the completion of their studies. Yeah, no, I don't like, I think they want to stay. I don't think that the means are really there, unless like the other rumor that started is that the LMIA program is becoming more flexible because of obvious labor shortages.
Yeah.
So there may be ways to stay, but unless they increase, you know, unless they abandon their 3-year program and say that they're about to move well beyond 400,000 permanent residents per year, not all those students can become permanent residents. It's just mathematically impossible.
True.
Like it's the math, you know, once there's a cap, then they have to pick winners and losers within all the foreign workers who are here and then even like, I mean, all the programs face this, right? Parent and grandparents has to have a lottery because there's an overall cap. So until they abandon those cap targets, I don't think there will be a guaranteed program so that students can become permanent residents. Because they also don't know, like that's part of what was revealed in the all these memos is a lot of times they can't really accurately plan how many people are going to apply to something because they don't know how many people are here, or they don't know how many are in Canada who are interested in applying, or how many are eligible to apply. There's that weird you know, like a little example of it would be that program for out of status construction workers that exists in Toronto. And they had almost no applications because they overestimated how many people would be here.
Would be there, yeah.
So
Then
their
they have
ability to plan this is limited. The TRPR was an example of that, where like, I think the French speaking streams never filled. The international graduate one filled on like day one,
Yeah.
then the other one slowly trickled in. So no, I don't think there'll ever be a program until they move beyond a target of 401,000 or 450,000. As long as there's that fixed cap, they have to divvy it up. And if there's no cap on the number of students, then they will have to pick and choose which students get to stay.
But this then puts us in a very strange predicament, isn't it? Like, for example, right now, I mean, I'm sure you do a lot of consults, I do a lot of consultations as well, where people are quizzing you as to the ways to come to Canada because they really want to immigrate to Canada. Now, because they cannot score the 500 plus kind of scores because you are now 31. I mean, imagine at 31, you do not have an option to come to Canada. So after you have exhausted the PNP options, because not all provinces are aligned to people from outside Canada either. So one of the pathways was to come to Canada as an international student, complete your period of study, get your work experience in, and then go through. But if we go with this narrative, that even with so many international students in Canada, you still may not be eligible to get through, you still may not be able to crack that door, then what? I mean, what do people do then?
They can only just hope, right? Like legally, someone who comes as a temporary resident, as a student, is coming with temporary intention. When they apply for their postgraduate work permit, they still have a temporary intention. You can have dual intention, obviously, but the way the law views it is your postgraduate work permit application is for a temporary permit. It's 3 years or less, depending on the length of your program. And so I don't think the law, I mean, as lawyers, we can kind of advise that, or in consultants, we can advise that here's the pathway, but there's no way to guarantee, especially if they move to occupation specific draws, there's no way to guarantee a result. And there'll be, especially with occupation, depending on how that goes. I mean, the other area that we haven't talked about is like I mentioned that there's 16 knocks being added to the list of which jobs are eligible for express entry. There's 3 that are being removed. I can't remember all of them. One of them is program leaders in fitness and sport. And so there's people who may not be aware that this change is coming, whose work soon won't qualify for permanent residence. And, hopefully people who advised and did consults with people in those knocks who told them, hey, after 1 year and as a leader in program and fitness, you'll be able to immigrate. That, if you're still have those people's contact info to reach out to them and say, hey, not guaranteeing that you'll no longer qualify, but here's how the programs are changing. And that's always been a feature, is that it's hard to guarantee. Going back to the CEC when they removed cooks, imagine how those people felt. I did consults with them. It was devastating. Like people with 11 months experience as a cook who followed that path, student, post-grad work permit, when they worked as an administrative officer or a bookkeeper, and at month 11 told that the cooks or administrative assistants no longer qualify. It was devastating. All you can really do is, plan based on existing laws and what you know is coming, but be prepared for the worst.
Yeah, that's the list of the 16 occupations that would get through now when the new tier system comes through. That's your
Yeah.
payroll administrators, your dental assistant, nurses, aides, pharmacy assistants, as well elementary assistants, elementary school teacher assistants.
Yeah.
You have commercial, correctional services officers, and several other categories. But I think the most important of those, which will really make an impact, would be the transport truck drivers and the bus drivers,
Yeah.
and of course, the heavy equipment operators. Those
I was
three
surprised this
categories.
wasn't redacted when I got it, to be honest, because like usually they redact the forward-looking stuff that hasn't been officially announced.
Yeah.
And there hasn't, as far as I've seen, been any official announcement that these knocks are being added, or more importantly, like I don't know how many, I think in program leaders and instructors in recreation, sport, and fitness, there's probably quite a few people there. I don't know how many tailors, dressers. I'm not even sure what a furrier is, or a milliner. But like those people are, might find themselves very disappointed come November if they're working in those occupations expecting to qualify in in 2023 for express entry. Someone who's now working in program fitness
Yeah.
won't qualify, depending on what the provinces do with their own programs. Like,
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you so much. Uh, I guess that's pretty much it that I wanted to sort of pick your brains. I know there are lots and lots of comments. Some
yeah, I
nice. Some
can't see the
nice.
comments. Are people still calling me? Am I being too negative? I remember last time I had a lot of people like writing to be like, "Oh my God, how can you say that there won't be a draw? That's so negative." I don't know. I haven't seen the comments.
Yeah, well, I mean, there you go. There's one. Immigration department should be given the world award for having the most complex immigration system in the whole universe. Actually,
Yeah,
no, the Australian immigration system is much more complicated, I would say. But with IRCC, it's not that they're complex; it's just that they're not transparent, and sometimes they themselves do not know which way they're going.
they're
So,
very not transparent, and I mean, like, I think the other they're also still mostly working from home. Like, I think that's an underreported thing that needs to be looked at is how much of the current backlogs are due to technology issues involved with working from home and the inability to fill locally engaged staff positions at visa offices abroad, especially in New Delhi. Yeah.
okay, there's
Yeah,
another
I mean,
one.
that's what people do. Like, it's, you know, if like like the path should still be to come to Canada on a work permit, get your year or two of skilled work, preferably with an employer, or like probably mandatorily with an employer that will help with an LMIA if needed, um, and to get that work experience. Because I mean, the big, like, probably underreported, but a very positive piece of news in the last few months has been the LMIA based work permits going from 2 years to 3, right?
Yeah,
Like that's huge. And I mean, the other thing that, like, at least I don't know if you've noticed or what the chatter is, but the LMIA stream is still pretty fast. The processing times are like a month and a half,
they
and
are. They are. At this point of time, they're
yeah,
doing very well. I mean, we've had several applications over the last few months, and I was shocked that there were LMIA applications being approved without any interview, without any
yeah,
documentation. Within a week, I was getting a result within a week, and I was like, "Wow, this
yeah.
is something."
And
So
that's for 3 years with, I mean, it's only 50 points, but I still have long-term faith that CEC will that there will be these CEC draws. The provinces always target them. So I
yes,
mean, the pathway, is still there. It's just people should be prepared that there's some big unpredictability over the horizon.
yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean that by any stretch that, you know, it's impossible or that there won't be programs that come along. It's obviously easy for us to say, being in Canada with the ability to stay here permanently, it's hard to tell anyone, like, you know what, try, there will be programs. When you have temporary status and you start building your life here, knowing that, you're kind of at the whim of government programs as to whether you can stay or not. Like, it's a very tough, I always try to put myself in like the shoes of my foreign worker clients, and I can't really, because I'm not here on this bizarre temporary status where if you apply to extend your work permit before it expires, you can continue to work, but you can't travel. Like, ugh. Like,
It's tough. I mean, it
it's
has been a
tough.
tough. It's been tough COVID. I mean, for everybody,
Yeah,
not only in Canada but elsewhere as well. And over here, things are only just beginning to show the color after what's the post pandemic looking like. Obviously, IRCC is not making it easy. I think one of the reasons is that they are trying to bring in the technology at such a late stage. I mean, I only wish that they would have started doing it much earlier, maybe 3, 4, 5 years back. But it's only now. I mean, we are still dealing with paper applications. I mean, this is
yeah,
2022 and we are still working with paper applications, right? And at this point of time, I think they're still trying to figure out what works better for them versus, like, for example, the GCMS system that they use, or the GC key that we use. It's ancient in so many ways. The technology there is so old as to
Yeah.
what it allows people to see and to do. That only increases the opacity of people not being able to see what's going on. Uh, One last thing before I let you go today, in terms of the people who are in Canada and they're looking for ways of expanding their status, or rather extending their status, and the way things are moving, would would you say that if they're not able to find a PNP program, if they're not able to find a relief within the express entry, would that be the end of their journey here? Or would, as we've noticed, some provinces, or rather, would provinces now also look at changing programs just the way express entry is going towards Bill C19, and they can have some hope with that?
Yeah, I mean, Ontario has something similar, right? Like Ontario does occupation-specific draws already. It is always hard when you meet someone in a job that doesn't qualify for express entry or any program, and there's a time limit on how long they can stay, to say, okay, you've got to go find a job with an
Yeah.
employer who is, depending on the circumstances, willing to go through an LMIA or a provincial nomination. It's always hard to recommend. Like, I mean, you have to recommend it, but it's always hard to hear. But there also isn't really, if someone wants to stay, a choice. And luckily, like, in this case, the backlog kind of works to their advantage, that it can take 6 months for an extension, during
Yeah.
which time hopefully they can find an employer who will give them that LMIA, or they can find a job with a charity, which is LMIA exempt, um, or any other like LMIA exempt category that may pop up.
Then, okay, with Bill C19 going the category based draws and provinces doing the category based draws, what would be different between the two? I mean, PNPs are doing the same thing. Don't you think PNPs will realign themselves and probably offer maybe a new kind of a program or a different program? Because if IRCC is doing the same thing, then PNPs are losing out, because one of the ways PNPs were able to attract people to their provinces was because so that they could identify people with the lower CR scores. Did not matter. For example, Alberta and so many other provinces, they would just choose the occupations they were interested in. But if IRCC is going to do the same thing, where does that leave the provinces?
Yeah, I mean, so like half the PMPs almost by default target the same programs, because, well, so there's two things. Like I'm sure based on the ATIPs that I've read, the PMPs also probably haven't been told what IRCC is planning with these category grouping based draws. The PMPs, to an extent, have all, like, half of the PMP programs seem to also just target the same people, whether it's to get more points or just, they're all targeting the same programs because, yeah, like in theory, you're targeting the high earners so that they can report, here's the average wage of people who go through our program, and here's the average education. And it looks good to present, right? So, like, they can present a positive spin. Then there's the
Okay.
programs like BC has the entry-level semi-skilled program, um, that, and there's other provinces that have unique, like, also programs for lower skilled workers, or entry level as it's called in BC. There's actually a specific truck driver program, which they may have to completely redo now that it's in express entry. So
Yeah.
the provinces are also going to, like, I mean, to people who are here now, like, there's going to be so much change happening that it may also work to the benefit of a lot of people. Long haul truck drivers and heavy equipment operators who are in Canada now working on their work permits have a much brighter future than they did 3 to 4 years ago. Like,
But you know what? For people like me who do these videos on YouTube, it's a good thing because we have so much of new content to
yeah,
create.
exactly.
I was getting bored of
Exactly.
making videos on express entry and
Yeah.
PNP and express entry. With all these changes, at least something is better than right. I mean,
Oh,
something.
the whole regs have to be redone. Like,
Yes.
I don't know, like, you were showing that memo that I tweeted earlier. I don't remember if I tweeted I think I did, the calendar of like all the changes. The regs have to be amended. Almost and it also gives them a chance to look at like every program that's based on Knox.
Yeah. This
Um,
basically had most of what needed to be done. the new tier system. Yes.
Yeah. Like, and so they have to do ministerial instructions. They have to change the regs. They have to do the tech. Like, there's so much change with opportunities that's coming. And again, like, hasn't much yet, but there is an all-party consensus that there should be more pathways to permanent residence. And if there is this all-party consensus on it, that could lead to a lifting or some sort of adjustment in how, whether the target is a number of permanent residents per year or something more fluid and flexible to account for people who are already here.
Okay, let's end with that positive
Yeah.
note that there would be something more promising coming. I mean, I would still go with Sean Fraser's that they are looking at, as Sean Fraser's comment, that they are looking to create a more permanent pathway for international students. And hopefully that happens sooner than later, so that a lot of people who have been waiting for that good news will have some pathway and be able to regularize and then can live happily ever after. Steven, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me.
I know it's a working day, and you've been, I mean, I've been keeping you away from your work. Thank you so much. And I definitely
the last time I came on your show was that evening. I remember emailing you saying, "Oh, look what just landed in my inbox, this memo to the minister that there won't be draws." So we'll see if anything lands in my inbox today.
Yeah, it seems like the show can get quite lucky getting you those memos.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steven. And
thanks for having me.
Do this again. Appreciate it, man. Well, that was Steven, and he had graciously spent so much of time giving you his insight, his opinion, his views. Guys, one more small thing as a disclaimer, which you should all be aware of, because so many of you have been commenting so many different things, and that is everything that has been said today, everything that has been expressed today is our individual opinion. It is speculation at this point of time. Steven doesn't know better. I do not know better. None of us know, none of the lawyers, none of the immigration consultants, nobody out there except IRCC or the think tank of IRCC. So yes, based on the numbers, based on the trends, based on the historical data, we can speculate a bit, we can expect certain things, but that does not mean that is how it will pan out. With that, my anticipation still remains the same. I do expect the draws to drop below 500. And I've already explained in the previous videos why I expect that. Until then, I'll keep my fingers crossed. I will stay forever hopeful, and I hope you do as well, because I've realized in life that's the only way to be. Thank you so much for joining in. It was a great episode again, hosting Steven. We will do this again. Stay tuned for new ones as and how we do it. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you next time.